Hi everybody, welcome to Dandelion Cottage and Watercolor Wednesday. I'm Leslie Watkins. So I'm coming to you just a little bit later today because I had some things that I needed to take care of. So, whoa, okay, let's see if we can get me on the window here. There we go. Um, and I thought what we would do is to paint today with the water-based inks because we haven't done that for a while. And because I have a special event coming up on the end of this week, a live event here in town in Norfolk, Connecticut at the Artisans Guild in my pop-up space, and it's going to be called Trip to Provence Crafternoon Tea. And so the Crafternoon Teas are going to take place each and every Sunday throughout the month of July from 11 to 3, and each one is going to have a different theme. So the one coming up on July 14th is going to be Trip to Provence, and it's going to feature lavender and citrus. We're going to have cookies and treats that also reflect the theme. And that gave me the idea that we should do a little landscape today. So I'm going to switch the camera down so that you can see what I'm working on. So I have a piece of the Fluid 100 watercolor paper here, and this measures 5 by 7. And I have my water painters. So I'm going to start, I think I'll start with the wide one. So when you get one of these sets of the water painters, you get 3 different brushes, and they are water painters because they have a reservoir in the handle so that you can put water in there, which makes them super convenient to take with you if you're going out of doors to paint, or if you're sitting on your porch, or on a trip, whatever the case may be. I do, however, have some containers of water off to the side here that I'm going to be using because it's just going to make it go a little bit quicker today. And I think what I want to do, I'm going to get out my glass palette. So let me reach underneath here. There we go. A little bit dirty. Let's get that cleaned up. One of the beauties of the glass palette is that you just have to wipe them clean and you're all set to go. So there we go. Now the reason why I'm using the glass palette today is because I want to wet the paper, and of course the glass will help to facilitate keeping the moisture on the paper and not going into an absorbent surface. So I'm just spritzing my paper a little bit, and I think you can see the moisture on there. And what's happening is that water is getting absorbed into the watercolor paper, and that's going to help to give me a nice soft edge in the beginning of the picture. Now the other thing I have here, and I'll zoom out so you can see this better, is my watercolor, or actually in this case my ink palette. So I've already got plenty of red and blue, but I'm a little bit short on yellow, so I'm just going to grab my re-inker, and this is the water-based ink that is used to replenish stamp pads. Comes in I think about 50 different colors. I will list all the ingredients and supplies I use in today's painting in the description after I do the live video. So if you're interested in any of these things, you don't have to worry about writing it down. You'll be able to see that. And I'll also give you a link so it's a little bit easier for you to get to the online store. Okay, so now Provence in southern France is noted for its lavender fields, and one of the motifs that we're going to be using this weekend is lavender and all of the different shades of lavender that you'll find in those beautiful fields. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just making sure that the moisture is distributed evenly across my paper. And I'm going to begin with a little bit of blue for my blue sky. And I'm just going very, very light with this. I'm just using 3 colors, okay? So I have red, yellow, and blue. And that's all you need to mix all the colors that you'll need for this little landscape. So what I'm doing is I'm adding the blue up near the top of the paper in the sky, and I'm just letting that kind of fade out as it comes down into the middle of the paper. Now I'm just going to check real quick, make sure that you can see me, because sometimes I'm here talking to myself and nobody's out there. But that looks like it's working all right, and I see there's some folks out there. So hi Kelly, hi Beverly, thank you so much for finding me today. Things have been very busy over here getting ready for the pop-up shop and all the events I have planned. If anybody's interested, if you're local, if you live in Northwest Connecticut, please go to my website at Dandelion Cottage Design. I'm going to be posting all of the events each week on my event page there, and it's going to be updated frequently. And if you are interested in advance notice, if you'd like to find out ahead of time, make sure that you subscribe to notes from dandelioncottagedesign.com, because that way you will, let me get my camera here, that way you'll be sure to know ahead of time and be able to plan accordingly, and you may have some special offers too that you'll find there. So please subscribe to notes from Dandelion Cottage. Alright, so right now I have my sky set. Now there are some beautiful mountains in Provence, so I'm just going to add a little bit darker blue to indicate the mountains that you may find there. Alright, and I'm just doing this from my imagination right now. I was looking at some pictures earlier this morning, but I'm just going to keep this very simple. And there are some beautiful stone structures, and so what I'm doing now is I'm just I'm mixing together a kind of a neutral tone by mixing my red, yellow, and blue all together. So I'm getting kind of a warm, golden, sort of a light tan mixture. And I'm going to add a building in the background. So something like that, very simple. And then I'm going to mix up, let me get some clean, I'm going to make a clean spot on my palette now so I don't get a muddy mixture. I'm just taking my paper towel, clearing a little area. And I'm just mixing a nice puddle of a kind of a, I would say, not quite a red violet, not a blue violet, but something in between. And I'm going to begin laying that in. Just a little more blue, I think. Here we go. All right, that's the family I'm looking for. So I'm just going to wash that in and bring it up to my mountains and just kind of let that blend together. So that's how I would begin. All right, now this is fairly damp right now, and at this stage what I'd like to do is I'd like it to be a little drier so I can start to put some detail in there. So I'm going to take a minute and I'm just going to use my heat tool. So I've got that right here. It looks like this. Okay, it has 2 settings, and I'm just going to take a minute to dry off my image so that I can start to get more edgy and harder edges and more drawing into my picture. So to do that, I'm going to mute you so you don't have to hear the sound of the heat tool. So just hold on for just a minute. Okay, so it's still damp, which is good. I want to be a little bit damp, but it's not saturated that it was a few minutes ago. So let's get you a little bit closer. All right, and now I'm going to switch to my medium tipped brush. So this has a pointy tip, and I'm going to take a slightly darker neutral tone and see how my, so there we go. You can see now that I'm able to get a little more drawing detail into my building here. So I'm going to go ahead and add some details. Make sure I get this straight. There we go. So I'm just going to add a door, some windows, and if anybody can tell me how they use these buildings, are these structures used to dry the lavender? That would be my guess, but I've never actually been there, so I don't know for sure. If you've been to Provence, let me know. And if this is the first time you're tuning in, say hi and welcome, and let me know if you have any questions. Just post them in the comments and let me know what you think. Also, Is there a particular subject that you'd like to see me paint? And I may feature that in one of the upcoming Watercolor Wednesdays. So go ahead and let me know you're here. I'm just going to let that sort of fade away at the bottom into the lavender. Now, the other thing that you'll notice when you look at the lavender fields is that there are very definite rows that the lavender grows in. So I want to indicate a little bit of that kind of feeling of the lavender rows going back into perspective. So let's see. So a little bit of that kind of a feeling. And we'll get the other side. And what I want to do here is I want to have a kind of a perspective point. So thinking about the perspective, for instance, of train tracks going back into the distance, it's that kind of an idea that I want to get established here. Okay, so that's starting to come together. And I'm just going to go ahead, mix up a little more of my color here. And just let that fade off into the background. And this is just a quick sketch. I did not do a preliminary drawing. I'm just kind of, oops, too blue. I'm just sketching with the brush and keeping it kind of loose and not really being too definite at this point. I'm just sort of feeling my way as I go. And I can see, for instance, that I need to adjust my color a little bit here and there. But because I haven't added too much yet, I still am able to have plenty of options to be able to make corrections and adjustments as I go. What's happening over here is that my yellow keeps running into my violet, so I'm having to clean my palette. So I'm just gonna give that a quick wipe before I go any further. Okay, now I'm mixing up some fresh violet or lavender, as the case may be. Let that get a little bit richer in the foreground. almost ready. A couple more rows and I'll be able to put in some more details. Now all the while, as I'm painting, the paper is drying, even though it's really warm and humid here today in New England. There is a little bit of a breeze coming through, and that's helping to dry the painting as I go. And as it becomes more and more dry, it's going to allow for different kinds of strokes that I can add. And so what the idea is that as the paper is at various degrees of wetness, you're able to apply various types of techniques. And what do I mean by that? So right now it's fairly damp, so I can still get a kind of a wet and wet feeling to the picture. But as it dries, I'm able to get more of a dry brush effect. And so that's important because it allows me to have the ability to add more and more detail. So I'm going to show you that in just a second. So right now I'm pretty happy with the way my rows are looking. So my rows of lavender going off into the distance. And I can continue to add a little more darkness in my foreground. So if I just kind of add a few touches and let that blend back, that's going to help to make the rows look as if they're coming forward towards us. Okay, I'm going to pause there for a second, take a quick look. Oh, Linda says she passed through Provence but didn't see lavender. Well, the time of year is now, Linda. The lavender blooms in July. So what time of year were you there? It begins in late June and it goes into early August. But this right now would be the prime time to be there. All right, so I'm going to pause for just a second with the sound again so I can use my heat tool to dry it off a little bit. So I'm going to mute you for just a minute. Okay, I think we're back. Ginger. Ginger says she's been sitting there since noon. Oh dear. Well, Ginger, I can't speak to Facebook's notices. They have their own way of doing things. I'm sorry that you didn't see the note that I was going to be coming on a little bit later today. But thank you so much for being patient and tuning in. All right, so we're just about there. I'm going to keep this very simple. And so what you saw me do is in the first stage, I just put in a broad wash of color for the sky, for the fields and indicated where the structure was going to be, and then I went back in with another layer of value, a little bit darker, to get the mountains indicated, and then I began to do the shadow on the side of the structure. This is a beautiful old stone building, and I began to put some detail to indicate the rows of lavender. And so finally, the last thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to keep this really quick and simple, 3 steps. The last thing I'm going to do is to add a little detail now and texture in the foreground. So let's see, can test a little area. See, that's too dark, so let me soften that a little bit. And my intention here is just to add a little more shadow and a little more texture into the lavender in the foreground. And to do that, I'm using my mixture of the red and the blue, this time a little bit darker, and just kind of using the tip of my brush to indicate what some of those shadows might be like in the foreground of the lavender. And I'll tell you what, the lavender that comes from Provence is nothing at all like the lavender that I can grow here in my garden. And to be completely honest, I'm not able to grow the lavender for very long here. It'll persist for a year or two, and then it will just kind of peter out. And part of the problem is that it's so wet here. There's so much moisture coming down off the hill, and lavender does not like to be damp. And the temperature just isn't that beautiful temperate climate that they have there. We're a little too wild here in northwest Connecticut, so I'm kind of a zone 5, sometimes 4.5, so it can get cold here. So as much as I love it and I enjoy it for a short time, unfortunately I haven't had much luck with it. And there are various types of lavender that are available, and each one has their own needs. And so of the various cultivars that are available, there's only one that that will begin to perform here, and it's not the beautiful fancy kind that they have in France. So I'm just building it up, just going back into the areas where I want to be a little bit darker, a little more texture. I'm mixing up a slightly darker mixture of my violet now, and I can just test that, see what that does. And I think you can see the varying steps of tonality pretty plainly here. Now I don't want to add too much detail to my structure because it's off into the middle distance, but I could add just a little bit on the corner just to help bring that forward. So I can just add a little bit of an accent there without going too dark. and soften that edge a little bit as it goes away. And so for instance, if I wanted to have another window over on this side, I could do that and just kind of let that fade into mystery, like so. So that's how I would get started. Now you can always go to Google and pull up some photo reference to get a lot more detail and get more specific with your drawing, with your additional elements. Maybe you'd want to put some other houses or buildings in there. Maybe you'd want to put a figure, whatever the case may be. But I just wanted to come on very quickly and share with you how I would begin a little landscape painting. I'm going to give you a close-up of this. All right, so very, very simple. And at this stage, basically, it's all set now for adding whatever detail that you'd want to add to your picture. Okay, so when you begin doing something like this, whether it's a landscape or a still life or a figure, whatever it is, you know, just start out broadly, start out simply, just don't get caught up in the details, and just get the basic structure established. Once you do that, then you can add all the rest. So thank you so much for joining me today. Remember, if you'd like to learn more about the trip to Provence and the Crafternoon brunch, or I'm sorry, Crafternoon tea, we're serving a tea on Sunday. Make sure that you subscribe to Notes from Dandelion Cottage, and you can do that at the top of my Facebook page. There's a sign up button, or if you're watching on YouTube, I will post the link below in the description, and I will also include the materials that you can get to help you get started on your watercolor journey. And just remember, you can do it. Okay, it just takes a little bit of practice, a little bit of knowledge, and you have to be interested to learn, and you'll be up and running in no time at all. So thank you so much for joining me today. Stay well, stay happy, stay creative, and I will see you next time.